Hello my friends, and welcome back to my channel where I have been discussing daily the contents within my recently published book, The Sleeper Agent, The Rise of Lyme Disease, Chronic Illness, and the Great Imitator Antigens of Biological Warfare. It is set to be released tomorrow on Amazon. I've had 100 copies sent to me. I've been selling it from my site, but tomorrow is the big day for the Amazon release. In this video, we will go over the weaponization of ticks, Lyme disease, and the mysterious connection to biological warfare. There is a spirochete image that I drew, those little circles around it. Those are the toxic proteins called blebs that they shed. Very immunosuppressive, and they shed from the spirochete, kind of like a wet dog, shakes its coat. It's like that, only in your blood, and it's full of toxins. The water are toxins, poisonous, make you feel like you've been poisoned. So, I mean, this book, it's not just about Lyme disease. It's actually far more inclusive. But I do kind of make that I guess you could say, the apex of the book. And not only the weaponization of Lyme disease, but also that cocktail of infection that are in the ticks. That was part of his weapon. It was kind of like many things rolled into one. So when you get that tick bite, you get not just Lyme disease, you get Lyme disease, you get babesiosis, you get Bartonella, you get human monocytic ehrlichiosis, you get all sorts of things. And it was kind of like what you call like a Russian doll cocktail of disease, where you got the doll, and then you open it up and it's got a smaller doll inside, and you open that up, it's got a smaller doll. It's kind of like that. And I'm not gonna give the whole thing away in this video. But I'm gonna just kind of briefly go over that. I've got a long trail of evidence, and Erich Traub's life work and his signature is all over it. And the amount of evidence is there's a lot of it. And it explains why it started out in Germany, why it also went to the Soviet Union, and it explains also why it went to the United States. So, and the Borrelia burgdorferi, the one of 3 spirochetes that cause Lyme disease, and also the other ones, Borrelia guerini and Borrelia afzelii, those all cause that immune tolerance, especially the multiple infections rolled in one. That definitely causes the immune tolerance hardcore. And it's got, so also the LCM virus that Erich Traub spent his life studying was like the animal model of the viruses that Lyme disease reactivates within the body, like Epstein-Barr virus. So you could say that LCM virus is kind of like the animal model of EBV, even though LCM virus also infects humans. But the whole idea was to send something like this mix of infections in, which then reactivate dormant viruses. That was essentially, because when you get that full spectrum chronic disease, most of it is that reactivated viral syndrome. Most of it. That Epstein-Barr virus and human herpes virus 6, which is an encephalitis virus, herpes simplex, or, there's also chicken pox is human herpes virus, I think 4. Oh wait, no, I think that's 3. I can't remember. 3 or 4. But I go over the entire story in here. Most, like, 3/4 of the book is covering Erich Traub's life. And there are other chapters, like in the first 4 are not about him, but then from 5 to 15 is about him, and then in the last one is about the Chumakov and Sabin collaboration. MP Chumakov was the Soviet bioweaponeer. I talked about him in my last video. But I have him with the spirochetes, the ones that, because it was from an avian strain of Borrelia called Borrelia anserina. I have his student in possession of him, and he's saying in that paper that he's bringing it back to the institute. Traub was his superior at the time, and he was to give it to him and Carl Beller, who was Traub's mentor, and that puts him in possession of it. And he needed to know, he had to kind of become an indirect expert on it, because he needed to be able to tell the viruses that he specialized in, like Newcastle disease and avian influenza. You need to be able to tell that from the what is called differential diagnosis, the things that look like it but aren't it. So you have to be able to rule them out. So that's why he would need all that expertise on things like that. And Borrelia anserina was one of the differential diagnoses to avian influenza and Newcastle disease. So, and also, it's not only got his signature in relation to that immune tolerance phenomenon, but it's also got his signature from adaptation, adapting it to many different species. So we have that, and it's just this was an incredible book. It was a lot of work. It was very hard work, and man, the amount of stress that I put myself through to produce this is immense. But finally, it's a finished product. I'm just so happy. I can hardly believe it that it's finally done. It just felt like the project that was never gonna end. And it did. We got it to here. Now, I've got a long journey ahead of me. I'm kind of bracing myself, because they're definitely going to try and attack me. And who knows? It's just, that's why I said in my last video, I'm not really happy about thrusting myself into the lion's den to combat this, but it's called sacrifice. So, 1939 was a big year for this whole story. Not only for the Lyme disease, but also for the mix of infections that it comes with. And Erich Traub's mentor, Carl Beller, taught him all about tick-borne diseases in that year, and he taught him about the mix of infections that produce very complicated infections or complicated conditions that are very hard to treat and very confusing to diagnose, because when you have multiple infections rolled into one, and he talked about how it also causes that immune tolerance outcome. So, I mean, it's just a long trail. And what's interesting is in 1946, I have a USDA publication of the black-legged tick, the main tick that's involved in the spread of Lyme disease and all those other nasty infections. It says in 1946, it was not a known transmitter of any disease. It was not a known transmitter of any human disease, although they were able to get it to transmit anaplasmosis. That's another major tick-borne disease that it comes with that I didn't mention. They said they were able to get it to transmit anaplasmosis experimentally. So they were experimenting with it. But then in the 50s, starting in the 50s, these ticks, starting in the 50s and then going into up to today, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. But I know, because, here's another very important thing that people have wrong. It did not start in 1975. The Lyme disease had been spreading for at least 25. It had been spreading since 1951. The only reason 1975 is why everybody thinks that it got here in 1975 is because that's when they decided to shine light on it and bring it out. And if you have there's a book by a woman named Polly Murray. It's called what is it called? It's called something in the circle. Oh, I forget. What is it? It's like right on the tip of my tongue and I can't remember. The Widening Circle, that's what it was. Yeah. The Widening Circle. She says that she initially got sick in the summer of 1956. Just a few years after this whole incident went down. And then she was like full-blown sick, like completely debilitated by the 1960s. So it had been spreading for a long time. 1975 is not when it began. It's just when they decided to acknowledge it. That's a very important thing. And so there's also like another important part of this is there is a USDA conference where they're talking about these bioterror attacks that occurred, and they mention, it's the only time on record they mention avian spirochetosis. And then after that, it's a blackout. Because you know why? Because it became classified. So, and in America, the Plum Island was kind of like the epicenter. But it was being spread all over the place at the same time. We basically, and I can show that the USDA was collecting the black-legged tick annually, and they saw that as a good tick to use for simulant tests, those insect simulant tests, because at the time they said, well, it doesn't transmit any human diseases. So, we can use that, put it on shorebirds, and then track the migration of birds and see how these ticks spread out, just like they do when they spray the bacteria in simulant tests. They also have these insect simulant tests. So there was that. And now in later chapters, I talk about the whole public relations thing where they shine light on it in 1975, and then all of the cover-up that ensued. I talk about that, and I specifically dispel. There is two people, David H. Persing and Sam Telford, and they put out a Washington Post article some years back saying, "No, Lyme disease is not an escaped military bioweapon, despite what conspiracy theorists say." It's always easy to use that word to try to discredit people, but they don't actually try to dispel the arguments. But it's a convenient word when your argument isn't good enough and you just want to make the other person look crazy, attacking them instead of their argument. But I go through and I dispel all, like, he stretches the truth. Those two stretch the truth to the point of falsehood. I mean, it was ridiculous. They said, these mouse. So they had two samples of mouse ear tissues from the 1800s that had a small, teeny fragment of the outer surface protein, which is also found on many other things. Like, so the protein itself is not the actual spirochete, and it's what is called extracellular DNA, and it changes rapidly and regularly, so it will always include material from other sources, because it's the outer surface protein, and so it's constantly assimilating material from things like bacteriophages and just in its environment. But the funny thing is, those two say that the outer surface protein is it cross-reacts with vaccinia virus. And so it's not like they have the whole protein intact. They have only a tiny fragment. So it's very unreliable evidence. And then they have another paper where they're citing tick samples, but in that paper they're actually supporting the story in my book. But at the same time, I still point out that really none of their information can be relied upon, because Richard Marconi from NIH said that the primers they were using for those papers were not reliable primers, and therefore could not demonstrate what they were trying to say. And I cover, the funny thing is he says Lyme does make some people very sick, but it only has a week long. He says it has a week-long incubation period, so that's too slow for an effective bioweapon. Even though if you look at the American biological warfare stockpile, a lot of the incapacitating agents they have in there have a longer incubation period. So that is completely irrelevant, and he makes, he fools his audience into thinking that, just because it doesn't kill, it's not a good bioweapon. He basically manipulates the reader's ignorance to try to sell this propaganda. And I dispel that, and I know there's some other articles too that they say, it's found on, we think Lyme disease may have originated finding it in mummies, old mummies, or a body from like the Ice Age. And all they had was a spirochete from the Borrelia genus. And yeah, those have been around, forever. But it wasn't, but they can't even tell what species it is. So, but then they jump to conclusions and say, it's Lyme disease. See, Lyme disease has been around for eons. And it's just semantics. But I have also, with all of that, I have John Loftus's information. Now, he was the first one to bring out that Lyme disease originated from a biological warfare experiment gone awry, and he actually confirmed that it was being spread by ticks before they even acknowledged that, before the scientists even acknowledged it. And by the next year, they confirmed what he had said. So, all in all, you're going to unravel the mystery, solve Lyme disease and the weaponization of ticks and the complicated infections that it caused. And Erich Traub's, I also talk about all of his work on LCM virus and how he realized he could create these complicated infections without having any abnormal blood work. And so therefore, this is why you have millions of sick Americans, but the doctors are telling them, you're not sick. There's nothing wrong with you. We don't see anything abnormal in your blood work. So, I think I've made this video long enough. I just wanted to kind of go over those points, but you get the idea. If you want to read the story in depth, I tried to make it as understandable as possible. It is kind of complex because, he was an evil genius. Like, he knew what he was doing, and it can get... I tried not to be too technical with it, but in order to understand it, and I had to kind of include some of that technical stuff to a degree, because if I didn't, that means that I would be leaving out key evidence, and I didn't want to do that. But I did try to explain it in the best way possible, and I think people will be able to understand it. I do. It's not too long. And what I tell people is like, hey, don't be overwhelmed with thinking you have to read something, like the whole thing, within a few days. It's like, just take a chapter a day. It makes it a very easy read, right? The chapters are typically about 10 pages each, give or take. But this book has an incredible story, and there's going to be a lot of powerful people that are not going to be happy about this. That's why I said I'm not super thrilled about having to take that position, but it's something that I felt that I needed to do. So I'm going to leave it there, and in the next video I will go over the dark triad of immune tolerance, chronic disease, mental illness, and cancer. So with that said, everybody, take care of yourself, be yourself, build yourself, and I will see you on the other side.
Seize the day, you'll die regretting the time you lost. It's empty and cold without you here. Too many people to wake over. I see my vision burn. I feel my memories fade with time, but I'm too young to worry. The streets we traveled on will undergo a same last past. I found you here, now please just stay for a while. I can move on with you around. I hand you my mortal life, but will it be forever? I'd do anything for a smile, holding you vision burn. I feel my memories fade with time, but I'm too young to worry. A melody, a memory of just one picture. Seize the day or die regretting the time you lost. It's empty and gone without you here. So many people to wake around. Newborn life, a place in all of us, changing this fable